So hello once again, everyone. This is Steve Taylor, lead advisor and founder over here at Merited Wealth. And thanks a lot for joining in to another edition of the Do It For Yourself podcast. If you've listened before, great. Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. If you can like us, subscribe, that's wonderful. If this is your first time here, I hope you find this valuable. What I try to do in this podcast is I bring different business owners, those that are out there kind of doing it for themselves. And we come in and we talk about the challenges and the trials and tribulations of having your own business that hopefully those listening can come in and get a little bit of value from it and take away a few nuggets. So today is a first of its kind for me. I'm having two guests on at the same time. And I'm really excited. It's a topic that has been really interesting to me over the years because unfortunately I've been kind of so bad at it. And it's this idea of having a partnership and creating a partnership and making it work. It's just it's such a hard thing to do, and I'm so enamored by those that are able to get it done. So let me make a quick introduction. Let's let them introduce themselves, tell them a little bit about their firms, and then we'll go into it. We have Jeffrey Bast and Brett Amron. Jeff, why don't we start with you? Give a little bit of introduction to yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Jeff Bast. Steve, thanks for having us on the podcast. Really excited to be here. I'm a father of three and a husband of my beautiful wife, Jale, and a partner of my beautiful partner, Brett Amron, who you'll hear from in a minute, and one of the founders of Bast Amron. We are a law firm specializing in insolvency and commercial litigation, essentially any kind of complex business dispute, and especially where there's some party with a shortage of resources. And I'm a former big firm lawyer myself, and we formed this firm 14 years ago, and we have 14 lawyers, and I expect by year 15 we'll have 15 lawyers, and so on, possibly. But I'm happy to be here.
And beautiful Brett.
Oh, right.
That might be.
Yeah, no. We're not. It's not going to stick. Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me, Brett Amron. I am also a father of three, married to my lovely and beautiful and very intelligent wife.
And my wife's intelligent too.
Oh yeah, and partner to my very lovely and intelligent and wise partner Jeff for 14 and a half years. I like Jeff, handle a lot of complex business litigation. There's always usually a tinge of insolvency there. Whether there's a distress situation, we come in to represent a fiduciary in either a bankruptcy, receivership, or assignment for the benefit of creditors. We usually are brought in to handle a lot of litigation, although we also do general representation as well. And yeah, I mean, I happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks. So Brett, I'll start with you, and we'll we'll go back to Jeff to get his take on this. But walk me through a little. So you said you guys have been doing this for 14 years. That's amazing. That's tremendous. Where did you find yourself, whether it be 15 or 16 years ago? Where did you start out? I mean, Jeff mentioned briefly he was big firm. I don't know where you were, and kind of where were you? What were you doing? And how did this idea, and these conversations with Jeff start?
Yeah. So I was a prosecutor when I first graduated law school for a couple of years. I then went to, I mean, you could call it big law, but it was really a larger boutique firm that specialized in insolvency and litigation as well. I was there for 8 years. I became a partner at a very young age. And I kind of sat back after becoming a partner, and I looked around, and I just kind of realized that in order to achieve what I wanted to achieve, that I'd likely have to leave and open my own firm. I didn't look around to see if to go to another firm or anything like that. I just sort of sat back and said, I think I need to do this. Went home, spoke to my wife about it. We had two very young children at the time, with an idea that we wanted a third. And, just she was 100% behind me. I had a lot of family support, which was great. And I just leapt. I mean, really went out on my own in January of 2008. And it was a bit of a shock to everybody, you know, where I worked and pretty much everyone in the community at the time. And I really didn't have a lot of work. And so I you know, at the time, I sort of look back on it now and I think, was I just blind and dumb, or did I have a lot of confidence in myself as a lawyer? And I think it's probably a combination of the two. But I think it was a little blind faith, right? That I had confidence in myself as a lawyer. I knew I could do it. I could handle any particular issue that came my way. It's just a matter of getting that work and getting out there. And so it forced my hand to do it. I really wasn't someone that was out trying to get business when I was at the firm I was at. And so it really just forced me to, because I was the only one. And so I did that for about a year and a half. Jeff did it right after me, and he'll tell you that story. And then we got together about a year and a few months later, decided that, you know, the synergies were there and that we wanted to, in order to take our practices, I think, to where we wanted them to go, that it was probably a better platform to join forces and form a firm.
Let me ask you this, Brett. When you went out in January 2008, did you know Jeff?
I knew Jeff, but I didn't know him that well, you know, from the practice and having some cases together and some work together. But that's about the extent of it. When I left, and I appreciate the question, it jogged my memory. When I left, Jeff reached out after sending my announcement. Maybe he was thinking about it then. I don't know, but we had it was either breakfast or lunch to kind of talk about it, talk about what I did and my practice and things like that. And then when he left, I did the same thing to him. And then we started using each other as that sort of partner down the hall that we didn't have anymore. I needed some additional space a few months later, so I moved in where he was subleasing. And then we started getting the same calls and pitching the same clients. And I have always been a litigator. The bankruptcy insolvency came later. Jeff was more on the restructuring side with litigation as well. And so there was a lot of synergies, and really personality wise, I think we complement each other very, very well in terms of our decision making process, and it just worked.
It's interesting, Jeff. I mean, Brett, I've seen a lot of attorneys. I've seen this done many different ways. Some believe to have completely diverse practices, right? That kind of bring in different sources of revenues and but you guys were really synergistic. We do both do this. We both do it very well, and to come together and kind of build that. And so Jeff, you're sitting at the big firm, right? You're hating it. No, I mean, you're thinking about other opportunities. All of a sudden, you get this letter from Brett, this guy you kind of know. Walk me through a little bit your path there.
Yeah, so I was, after law school, I clerked for a bankruptcy judge in Texas, and then I came here and clerked for a district court judge, and that was handling all the bankruptcy appeals for the Southern District of Florida. And from there, I went to Holland and Knight, and I made my way up to equity partner. And then Hunton and Williams's Miami office was started by a group of Holland and Knight lawyers, and that group had been asking us to come over. Hey, you guys should come over. And then a couple of years later, we jumped and went over to Hunton and Williams, and I was happy there. I was, I never left any firm that I was really miserable at. So I'm fortunate. I was the hiring partner. I had a corner office. I had a good parking spot. I was well compensated, but I was just getting at this point where I wanted something new. I needed to, try something. I wanted to build something. And I remember getting Brett's email announcing his firm, and I was like, that's cool. I'm proud of him. I knew his name, but I really didn't know him. I don't think we had ever met face to face. I probably had at some point, but I didn't have a recollection. But I sent a note saying, congratulations, that's great. When the dust settles for you, let's grab lunch. And we did that. And I don't know if that planted a seed for me or not, but about 2 months later, similarly, I sat with my wife and said, hey, babe, I'm thinking of starting my own firm. And she's like, what? She was just shocked. And very similar to Brett, I had a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old at home. And I did some rough calculations, back of a napkin, said, oh yeah, I think I can do this. And I remember it was March 10th of 2008. I sent an email out announcing, announcing that I was starting my own firm, and my inbox literally just went, I had like a flood of emails almost immediately. And in one of those was an email from Corey Lopez Castro, who's now Judge Corey Lopez Castro, with a referral. I got my first client within minutes of announcing my, my new firm. But remember, we practice in the insolvency arena, and this was early 2008. So there was no time for really anything other than just keeping your head above water. We just were slammed immediately. And like Brett said, we were sharing ideas and then space. And how lawyers give referrals, they always give 3 names.
Yeah.
Well, one name would be Brett Amron, when another name would be Jeff Bast, and then some third name, poor guy or woman. And literally our staff people were sharing space, my paralegal and Brett's paralegal, and they get a call from a prospective client to schedule an initial interview. And then the phone they hang up and the phone rings, and Brett's person gets the same call from the same client. And we're literally interviewing clients in the same conference room. So that's when we said, we should do this.
That's awesome.
And you're right. We our practices are similar, but they're not as similar as they might at first blush appear. Brett's a litigator that knows bankruptcy, and I'm a bankruptcy lawyer that knows litigation. And so we really complement each other well. And I didn't know Brett that well, but over that year, the course of about a year, it was probably, I guess, 6 or 8 months, I learned that, he's a smart guy. He works hard. He's got, great moral compass, and, the rest is history.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's a great lesson, Jeff. I've seen it every time when I've done it or see with other people, that whenever you go out and you tell people, hey, listen, I'm taking this risk, I'm taking this jump, I want to kind of do it for myself. It's amazing how many people just want to help. They're so happy to help. And that you're no longer with this large company, you're small and on your own, the outpouring just comes. I mean, that's an awesome story. You're like, within 20 minutes, you had your first referral. Believe it or not, if someone's listening or thinking about it, that happens. And tell the people out there that you care about, they care about you, because you'd be amazed. They just want to help you.
Yeah. And anytime I get an email from someone announcing their, the formation of their firm, I always write to them and say, hey, I went through it. If you ever want to sit and talk, I'm happy to share advice, or, whatever, however I can help you, please let me know. And you're absolutely right. People want to help. And that's advice I always give to, friends, colleagues, my kids, to ask for help. Like, people see that as a sign of weakness, but it's a sign of strength. Like, if you just ask people for help, people want to help. They really do. I mean, everybody,
thank you. Yeah. So great. So you guys are you're sharing this space, you're handling these clients, at the same time, one after the other. I can see it. The client stays in the conference room, and then one of you walks in and the other one comes in. So you say, okay, so we're going to do this together. So talk about, I think, you don't have to go into whatever specifics you want, like kind of the early days, kind of how we're doing it, and how you're doing it, in the sense that, like, how are you splitting fees? How are you splitting expenses? How complicated was it during the first couple of years as you're getting up and running?
Not complicated at all. When Jeff and I got together, we had to just sort of address, some of the existing matters that we brought over, and maybe some outstanding fees or expenses or whatever. But it was pretty simple. We sat down and we said, okay, 50-50. Yep. Done. And that's how, and that's how we operate. And, there's just a high level of trust. And, as Jeff mentioned about me, the moral compass, I would say the same thing about him. And that trust comes into play. And so there's never really an issue or a concern in my mind, and I think in Jeff's mind as well, that, oh, well, Brett is doing this, or charging this, or, spending this, or, and so there really was no issue at all from day one. And I think that's in large measure a significant component to our success as a partnership, which I know they're hard. Partnerships are tough.
Very hard. And Jeff, was it that as easy for you too?
Yeah. I mean, easy is, easy to say in retrospect. I mean, there was a certain amount on both of our parts, because we really didn't know each other that well.
Right.
We had encountered each other at a time when neither of us had an agenda. We weren't really, I mean, in theory, we were competing, but there was enough work to go around. But we're both going down this path, alongside each other. And so, yeah, there was a tremendous amount of, respect. And we went into it with a sense of trust. And we were on the same page about, we didn't want an environment where, I brought this in or you brought that in. We wanted to just work together. We didn't want people to have to worry about, do I call Brett? Do I call Jeff? So we wanted a collaborative environment, and we wanted to share. And we figured, 1 year you're going to work harder, or you're going to bring in the big case, and the next year I will, or whatever. If we do this long enough, it'll all shake out in the end. And, that worked, and it's continuing to work. So
kudos to you guys. I remember some of my early partnerships. It was tough. It was kind of, well, who gets origination and who gets working on it, and how do we split the expenses? And there was a firm credit card, and one of the partners would put, and those are just all those arguments I know that you probably, you've seen and or heard about, right? And not amongst you guys. So really kudos to really have that long-term view. And so you did that. You started those early on. How about kind of like the middle years going through it? Was it kind of always as smooth? Was there can you think of any like major modifications that you had to make along the way that wasn't there the early, like what did you, or lessons learned that you had to change it and say, okay, well, we started with this and that didn't really work, but because of our experience, we've now done this and this works better.
Yeah. I don't, nothing really jumps out. I can think of, big issues that came up along the way, such as, when we first signed a lease. Signing a lease is a big, 10-year commitment. All right, are you sure? I mean, we're looking at each other like we're in this, or 10 years. All right, we're at least committing for 10 years. And every time you hire a new employee, those types of commitments that are, we take seriously. But when you hire an employee, first, I always tell young, people starting their own firm, just hire someone. Don't, people are waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Just hire them. But we never take hiring lightly. And, we view all of our employees as, family, and pretty much everyone that we've ever hired is, still with us, like in large part. A couple people have left over the years, mostly to move to other cities or other careers or whatever it is. But we have very little turnover. I would say the biggest decision I could think of was in the first time we brought, a partner level person over, Scott Brown, our partner down the hall here. And, that was always, we were super concerned about doing anything because we had built this beautiful partnership together, that about bringing anyone else in or doing anything that might, fracture that or impede that. And so we've been able to maintain it, and now we have 6 partners here in the firm, and so we're growing and living the dream.
That's awesome. Brett, what would you say?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That was going to be one of the things I was bringing on Scott. That was certainly a big decision for us, a big change. And then subsequently to that, making the decision to bring on younger partners who, we've either brought over laterally or raised up from, associates. But I'd say going back a little bit further, the decision to bring on an office manager.
Oh,
we're in this, we're a small firm. We're, Jeff and I are, trying to figure it out. And we weren't even looking for an office manager. And someone sent us this resume of a woman who had been doing it for a really long time. She had been at big firms and was kind of looking for, a change. And, Jeff and I looked at the resume, and very impressive, had, great credentials, great experience. And we kind of looked at each other and we said, well, I don't know, let's meet her. And so we did. And, obviously we were impressed. And then we got, sort of the idea about how much it would cost. And, we just sort of looked at each other, and then we started thinking, all right, well, what can she take off of our plates that will allow us to do what we need to do to, practice law, to, mentor younger lawyers, to do all of that stuff, to go out and get new business. And when we started factoring that in, the amount of money wasn't as significant. We were still really nervous about it, but we did it. And I think that, to me, started to mature us and the firm, as like a real firm and a real business, and not just sort of this fledgling new firm out there, like, young guys starting a firm. So I'd say that was starting. And then I agree with Jeff on the other stuff as well.
Yeah, that's great. And Brett, you said before you went out on your own that you were a partner at another firm, right? Mm-hmm. So, what did you take from that experience and say what you didn't like to now, you guys, it's not just you two. I think you said maybe it's 6 in total. What did you take from those lessons and bring to the table and say, hey, I'm not going to do it that same way. These are the things I really hated about it, to say, I'm going to make this. I think I have a better idea to make this work.
Yeah. So I'd say open lines of communication, transparency, the ability to allow others to step up, and lead, which is, we want to see that. That's kind of what we're here for, right? And there's different ways law firms operate, right? There's some firms that, allow their younger lawyers to grow and to succeed them, like the existing partners, and to grow and to continue on. And then there's some firms that just sort of churn lawyers out. I'm not saying that was how the prior firm handled it that I was at, but in order to try to foster an environment where people want to stay and they want to grow and move up, I think you've got to give them those wings. They've got to take it, right? They've got to take that opportunity, and they've got to do it for themselves too. It's not just all of you. But I think that we provide an environment where people can do that if they want to do that. We work hard, no question, and that's mandatory. Like, you just have to. In the type of practice we have, and in just law in general, you have to work hard. Does that mean you have to work hard all the time, every day, every weekend? No. And so we prioritize. Family is important, but it is not. It's not. You can't forgive the work. Like, you have to do the work, because if there's no work, and if we do a bad job, there's another law firm, another lawyer that's going to replace us pretty quickly, right? Mm-hmm. We've learned that. So what we try to do is create a good environment here, a nice environment, a welcoming environment where everybody is nice to each other, they respect each other. Does that mean that there's not, there's squabbles here and there, but we all sit down and we try to address them like adults and professionals. We certainly treat everybody like adults and professionals. And Jeff and I and everybody all the way along the line treat everybody else with respect in this place, right? Yeah. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a first-year lawyer. I don't care if you're a 20-year lawyer or a 20-year paralegal. Everybody gets treated with respect. And I think that goes a really, really long way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And Jeff, what would you say?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything Brett said. And the other thing is, well, one is that we had the benefit of 3, I was a partner at 2 firms, Brett was a partner at 1. We had the benefit of the experiences at 3 different firms, so we could, pick and choose what we like. But the other thing, in addition to what Brett said, is we've always been vocal with our lawyers about succession, that we are grooming every one of them to be our partners, and eventually to be our equity partners, our owners, and eventually to replace us. That Brett and I are going to be gone, and we expect them to be running the place. And I think a lot of lawyers are resistant to do that at a lot of firms. And, and that's when people start looking elsewhere. So there's that. And then, as Brett said, our people, we just genuinely care about our people. And we have this, it's on our website. It's one of our core values, is that we care. We really care about, each other and our clients and the cases. But you see it, like, these people, our people like each other. They eat lunch together and they hang out, and their families know each other. And I always say, this is my family, and I mean, we mean that. This is our family, and their families are our family. And and it's the team that that makes Brett and I have a great partnership, but we're nothing without our team. And we both subscribe to the maxim that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're getting bad advice. So we surround ourselves with people that are smarter than us, better than us, more creative, more diverse. And, and that's what makes the thing work. I don't think we could ever point to one thing or one person that is the key to our success. It's a truly collaborative environment where every voice is valued at every level. Everybody contributes, everybody's a part of the team. We recognize each other. We have a weekly huddle that every week starts off with all hands on deck, a stand-up meeting. It's 15 minutes, but part of that meeting is what we call above and beyond, where anyone can recognize anyone else for going above and beyond. And that seems like a small thing, but it's really important. We've created a vehicle for recognition, and people should be recognized when they do well, and you should have a vehicle for appreciating someone publicly. And so it's it's a little bit of everything that makes it work.
Yeah, that's awesome, guys. And I see what I keep hearing is that theme of communication and openness and allowing people to come up, which is huge, and it's a tribute to both of you. And that's everything, right? Anything can be resolved when you communicate on it, and almost nothing can be resolved when you don't communicate. So let me ask this question to you guys, and I typically have a question I ask towards the end, but I want to do this one differently, right? It came to me as I'm thinking here and talking to you guys. So about 14 plus years ago, we have beautiful Brett, PA, and we have lovely Jeff, PA, right? And you guys have just left and you're going out your own. Let's imagine for a second, you didn't meet the other one, right? You didn't develop this bonding, and you kind of continue to go on your own. How would that have looked different, right? What do you think? How would that have looked different? Maybe a fair answer is I would eventually have found someone, because that's many times I say, I've owned my own businesses, but I've looked for people to do this with. But let's say if you didn't meet each other and you're both great people, great lawyers, how do you think this would have looked differently? And whether that would be, the challenge or whatever it might be because of that. Let me start with you, Brett. I mean, what you originally envisioned, let's say you didn't meet lovely Jeff. What do you think? How would this have looked?
My life certainly wouldn't be as fulfilled as it is today, for sure. Man, that's a great question. That is a hard question to answer because it really could go in any number of different directions. I suppose I could have, maintained a solo firm by myself and just brought on younger lawyers as necessary. I certainly wouldn't have the exposure that we currently have because of the platform we have, like the types of cases, the size of cases, the fact that we can get cases as far away as Seattle and work on those in California and all over the country. So it would not be like it is today in terms of the type of size of the practice.
Yep.
Would I have ended up taking that practice and going into another firm? Maybe, but I think like Jeff, we talked about how, relatively smooth it was when we joined, and it was, but there was definitely some hesitation, right? Because it's just like, listen, we're effectively married, as if we're just business partners, not life partners. And so, it's the same thing. We see each other probably more than we see our spouses. And so there's gotta be that trust. And so going into the partnership, there's gonna be some hesitation. Now obviously, we have the benefit of hindsight and looking back on it, but I'm not sure if I would be able to find somebody that I would be able to trust as I do Jeff, and as it was when we went into the partnership. So I really don't know, where I would be at this point, or what it would look like.
Well, you don't think it would be as big, right? You wouldn't have as much renown, right? You have that support, these bigger cases. You think the partnership had a big part to play in that, and absolutely, I'm certain. And Jeff, what I know it's a tough one. What would you think, or what would you have missed out on?
Yeah, I mean, I like to say that, the universe would have brought us to each other at some point anyways, if it didn't happen 14 years ago, because
Oh my God, that's so sweet, Jeffrey.
meant to be, it was meant to be.
Do
So
you guys
yeah,
need a room? Should I give you a breakout room?
Exactly.
um, yeah, it's like, it's really hard to imagine. There were other people that I was friends with, but Brett and I are not. I know partners in town and other firms that they're childhood friends. The partners were childhood friends, and they know each other their whole lives, or they went to law school together. We didn't really have any of that, and I think that's part of why it works, though. If like we were best friends and we went into partnership together, I think it's a little too close. I consider him one of my best friends. I mean, we are close, but we don't like hang out all the time. We can hang out. Our wives love each other, and when we do go out, we have a great time. We've traveled together, but it's not like we're all up in, if we were working together all day and then going out every weekend, every night, I think it would just be a little, suffocating. But so I recognize I'm not answering your question, Steve, really.
That's okay. You don't
Really
have to.
hard to imagine a life without Brett. So
I
no,
get you.
I'm sure it would have been different in some ways. Maybe I would have ended up back at Big Law or something, because like I said, I was happy there. I thrived in a big firm environment, but I set out, I wanted to build something, and I saw this is a guy who, I don't know if it's the right analogy. I'm a builder and he's an architect or whatever, something like. I saw this is a guy we could build something together, and we're doing that.
I was going to add there to, in closing here, I think you nailed it exactly. I think a lot of people, there's a lot of mistakes made that just because you've known someone for a long time, like and trust them, you've been best friends, that many times people will try to go into business together because they're friends, right? And many times what happens when they do that is they don't really overly communicate like they would, because they think, oh, they assume that he must know that or she must know that, or whatever it might be. And I see a lot of those fail. And I personally have been through that, right? And these ones people that you meet in business, it's kind of like you say, the fates would have brought you together. Well, you came together and you gravitated. There was a reason for it, right? You're later in life and you're there. And I've seen, I'm working on a couple of those now, are going really well. But I think that's a great point to it, right? You got to have that moral compass, that ethics, those work ethics, complementary, even if it looks kind of the same. Kudos, and it's worked, right? The proof is in the pudding. You guys have done awesome. So listen,
I just want to emphasize one other point. Sorry.
Yeah.
We've talked about this trust thing, but I can't stress how important that is, because, Brett and I have had disagreements over the years, but I've never, ever, ever questioned his motivation. I never thought he was proposing something because it would serve him. I always knew that he had the best interest of the firm in mind. And I know, like, anytime I make a decision to do something, I always think, well, would Brett do that, or would I want Brett to do that to me, or whatever it is? And I believe he decides that, that way, as well. And so if you have a partner and you don't trust them, you don't have a partner. Like, you have a friend or a colleague or whatever it is. But a true partnership is built upon trust. If you don't have trust, you have nothing, because there are going to be so many challenges. And so I just know in my bones that this man here is going to propose something, and I might disagree with it. I might think he's 100% wrong, but I know it's coming from the right place with the right intention to serve, the firm. And without that, I don't think we'd have anything,
Brett,
any parting thoughts?
No, I agree with that. Although I don't think I've ever been wrong, but we, I mean, honestly, it's the same thing as, and I go back to this, the same thing in your, in your relationship with your, your wife, your significant other, I mean, there's got to be that trust that someone has good intentions, right? And that they may have an idea, they may come at it differently, and they may make decisions in a different way than you, but ultimately their intentions are right. And so you can sit down, and I know, we use the word disagreement, but I would like to say it's like healthy debate. And sometimes we've come to a different spot and a different decision than either I or Jeff were initially proposing, based upon that, healthy debate, and we seek out each other, and we also seek out each other for advice on various issues. And so, yeah, I mean, that trust goes a long, long way. And we have represented people who are either lawyers or in business that are, going through a business divorce. And it's always because there's no trust.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just always someone does something to somebody else and they either wrong them or because they think that the other person is doing something, and it's just no communication and a lack of trust. And so, listen, there's times when partnerships end because it's just time to end. But at least if those people sit down and they have that communication, well, then that ends on a good note, and everyone splits things up and they divide it and they move on. But it's that lack of trust that will destroy it and then really make it ugly on the backside. Great point.
Great point. Well, guys, I really, really appreciate it. I love this. We're my first dynamic duo on the podcast. This was really great. So listen, anyone else out there, we hope you enjoyed this. If you have any ideas or if you'd like to be a guest or any ideas for topics, just let us know. Brett and Jeff, thanks a ton, guys.
Steve, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.